I didn't want it to end.
Oh, that's nice. Oh.
Yeah. So I guess we could start. I kind of like, instead for these chapters, I kind of looked at 3 themes, like the approach and teaching, and then the structure the school offered, and then support. So I didn't really plan on talking about it chapter by chapter, but it's up to you guys if you think that's better.
No, the themes I say that were assessment, knowledge, teacher control versus student control, and resources. Those are my 4 ideas I thought were interesting.
Okay.
But,
yeah, so they kind of.
I'll slip mine in where we go. There we go.
Okay, great. All right. I guess, well, it kind of does start out with chapter 5, but the approach to teaching and how they looked at the 2 teachers, and then the Olin University or college, I forget what it was, but just how they approached it differently. And I think that the science teacher, of course, I forget all these people's names because there's so many of them. She was talking about teaching or getting your kids to like learning to fail, and how in her school there weren't a lot of kids, or the kids hadn't experienced failure a lot. And we've talked about this so much. I think it's kind of a trend that keeps coming up, but how she has to teach her mentor teachers to like step back and let the kids fail. And I find myself having to do that with our teachers as well. Like, it's okay if they fail. So what are your thoughts on that?
I feel that at the school I'm at, letting kids fail is frowned upon. It's not a part of this culture. And by culture I mean both the Taiwanese culture and the culture of the school.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully that's changed. I do see it changing, and I do see it. I see the school moving towards a more holistic approach to assessment. We just started standards-based grading, pretty much, but that's in the very early stages, and we need to educate the parents on that, because they have no idea what they're like. Where are the letters?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're in the process. It's actually been like almost a year and a half process of we're moving to standards-based, and it's the same thing of educating the parents and getting them comfortable with it. And it's been a process, because we had to, for Brazilian law, we had to kind of do this conversion, like if they meet the standard, it equals this percentage, because they needed a percentage. Mm-hmm. And it's so, because then immediately when we put that percentage on, it just equaled a grade for the parents, because that's how they were taught and that's how they learned. And then, so all that, but it's been, I think we've probably had parents and then continual meetings like with the teachers, and because even the teachers, it's a hard concept to grasp. Like,
yeah.
Like we had one teacher say, well, I'm going to be giving a lot of, we did it 1, 2, 3, 4s, but now we're changing it to like needs intervention, approaching, developing, meets and exceeds. But she's like, but then I'm going to be giving a lot of 1s at the beginning of the year. Give them a 2 or 3. And we said, no, it's the end of the year standard. It's okay if they get a 1 or a 2. It's by the end of the year we want them to meet. So it's right. Okay. And she's like, but that's going to hurt their self-esteem. And we had to like talk about it won't, because you're having this transparent conversation, and you're going, and when you're doing the rubrics, you're consistently talking with them. And so it's been an adjustment for our teachers and our parents, and our students actually got it like super quick. Our students were like, oh, okay, this makes sense.
Yeah.
So
the other way you can do that is base it on where they should be at a point of time. Mm-hmm. So the standard is for this time in the year.
Yeah, I know. We need to do that, then break it into chunks of where they should be at that certain time. We haven't gotten that far yet.
So far away from this idea that it's a continuum and every child does not develop at the same time. So
exactly.
We're here.
Yeah. I think what you said, Thomas, like, oh, sorry, go ahead, Joy.
It's okay, carry on. Carry on.
Sorry.
Yeah, it's trying to think what I was just going to say now. You've got a continuum of moving along, but as soon as you say at this grade level, they should be at this point, then where does the individuality come in? It's, yeah, it's standard. It's great. It's standards based, but a continuum goes to this is where they should be. It's very difficult to grade on.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
It is.
something that I noticed when I was in my last position as an elementary homeroom teacher, you know, what does it mean to be you know, meeting the expectation for a second grader? You know, like or for a first grader. What is an ideal first grader? What does that mean? You know, so I see what you say, because it's really hard to put someone exactly in a continuum and say, okay, this is where we are, and I think his name is Todd Rose. There's a Harvard education professor who wrote a book about the myth of the average.
Yeah.
And yeah, after I haven't read the book, but after seeing his TED Talk, that's where my thinking went. You know, just it's really hard to put someone and say, oh, okay, this is where you should be.
Yeah.
Well, and one of the moms in the last chapter talked about that her son wasn't reading in first grade, and she didn't care at all, and she went into the teacher, and the teacher didn't care, because so many parents are like, why aren't they reading, and wanting them to be on level. And then I think it was in second or third grade, he picked up a science magazine and read the whole thing. Like, it was just the developmentally. Now he's, you know, I'm sure progressing and being an innovator and thinking creatively. But yeah, what our school did, we created, because we saw that problem of like, it's that treating them as individual, and they might not be there yet, but they're going to get there. So we have actually a learning continuum. So it has the standards or expectations from K through 6. Actually, I think we went up to 7th for one. And so you can look at that, like with the child, and not tell them which their grade level is, but just show the skills that they're able to do, and then talk about how to get them to the next level.
I think is good.
Yeah. So. But it's been a lot of training for our teachers, because it is, I think the traditional approach to school is this: move everyone along at the same pace, and it's empowering your your teachers to realize that they have the teaching skills to help along, you know, 15 different kids at different times and different stages, because it's just then that comes into like what I was talking about, the approach to teaching and the framework that you use in your class. It's not whole class instruction. Like a lot of these kids that were successful and the teachers that were successful, they had student choice, and then they were given teams to work in, and it was at their own pace. They had the end goal of like, by this semester, you need to be done with this, or by whatever date. But throughout the whole progression and like the evolution of it was their own pace. And that allowed for the learning of failure. It allowed for the learning of the skills, the collaboration, all that, because it wasn't on such a rigor, like a steps and rigors thing. So
I think changing the terminology of learning to fail to learning to prototype and experiment it would be a positive move. Certainly when you're talking with the children. We're not
for sure
to encourage them to fail, we're trying to encourage them to persevere and find ways forward and
to
develop.
overcome.
But,
yeah, I like that, to prototype. We just did this really cool activity. So we have a social emotional curriculum that every Wednesday morning for an hour, we meet in mixed grade level groups. So from first grade through 5th. And 2 or 3 weeks ago, we gave them a design project to build the tallest tower they could with popsicles and like clips. And we didn't help them at all. And we had to tell the teachers, don't help, just, you know, facilitate. And it was also about controlling your impulses. Like when you get frustrated, how do you feel, and being able to talk about it. That was the main point of it. So it was so interesting. The first time they did it, the kids literally dumped the box of popsicle sticks out and just stacked them on top of each other. So the highest they got was this high. And then we went back at it the next week and we said, reflect upon it. And if you want to look and get some ideas from home or whatever, and come with new ideas for next week. And then the following week, their towers were unbelievable. They figured out how to like clasp them together and build a base. And so they had them that were over, 2 feet tall. So it was really interesting to give them that reflection time, but also to not at all say anything and let them figure it out on their own. And I think, we didn't have a focus group or anything, but I think if we would have helped one group and not the other, like at the end, you could see with all the kids how proud they were. Even if theirs wasn't super tall, it was taller than the previous one that they had built. And so they had this like, yes, we did this. And it was amazing to watch. The point of the lesson wasn't for them to actually build the tall. It was about impulse control and working together. But that was just an observation and a connection I made to this book. It was really, really neat to watch. So
yeah, I think giving that time is huge. That if they know what they're doing, the resources available, and then give them time to think about it, your results skyrocket.
Yeah, I think another thing that's so big is like the source of knowledge in the room to like empowering your students to realize that they're a source. And so then that enables because I think that when you kind of are more of a guide in your teaching, it empowers the kids because they have to figure out, you're not always available. You might be working with another child, or you might be, and they realize that they can solve problems on their own. And it really, because at our school, we have a lot of very wealthy kids that have never had to problem solve on their own. And so it's giving them the strategies and the opportunities to do so, because that's what innovation is, right? It's problem solving and being creative. And what they might see as a problem, we might not see, and they'll come up with different solutions than we will because it's real to them. Like the other day at recess, I was supervising and a girl came up to me crying, I can't find my friend. I don't know where she went. Will you help me look for her? And I said, well, how could you find her? What could you do? Because I wasn't going to go around searching for this child. But I think that so often we just want to solve the problems for the kids. So it was funny.
Yeah, and it's, I think, also important to find ways to support them in solving those problems. They've no experience with them. If parents have done everything for them, they're not used to it. And if they're finding it difficult, how do we actually support them to develop the skills?
Yeah, and that's something that I'm finding in my class. I teach design in high school, and most of the kids have not taken it before. So we actually go through the design cycle 4 times during the year. And so for this first one, because they haven't had exposure to it, I've scaffolded their learning. I've given them exemplars, and I've shown them how to do these kinds of things. But I expect that for the next time that they can do it on their own, and they should be able to. They should be able to go back and look at their own work from this first one. But yeah, that's what I found last year. I didn't give them anything, and they kind of floundered. So this year I wanted to support them a little bit. Yeah. It's the balance of like letting them fail but not letting them drown. So, yeah.
I think having them reflect on it as well, so they can show what they've done and talked about some of the problems they had as a group to the rest of the class. I think that helps the other children think next time, oh, I could try that. So sharing those strategies they found.
For sure. I mean, you can apply it to anything, design and innovation. But this week we were meeting with grade levels about their reading. We do a readers and writers workshop about their reading journals, and some of the grades were really having a struggle with figuring out how to get the kids to use them. And then a teacher said, well, just do a museum walk and have the kids just lay out their journals, and kids could walk around and look and get ideas from others. And the teacher's like, oh, yeah. And one did it, and they said, oh, it was so helpful because I wasn't the one teaching them how to do this. They were looking, they got to choose something that worked for them. So I think it's finding like little ways to integrate that into all of the teaching, because we don't have, we were saying last week, like the time to do these huge projects sometimes, but I think you said it, Joy, it's like the little things, like letting kids tinker or letting kids figure out the problems on their own or offering them different options. So I think any way we could open up the doors to giving them more choices and opportunities is a way to do it. So
and I really liked what you guys did with the tower, and you let the kids reflect and then improve the next time. And I think that really it really helps when they can build on their own learning.
And I think it was like really intentional that because so often you have like all this curriculum you want to get through. And I was with our counselor writes all the lessons, our psychologist, and I said, I really think that they're not going to get this, but if we rush through it, we're going to be they're not going to learn from it. So she went back and actually like planned for an extra lesson to do the same activity again. So having that flexible thought to say they're probably going to need a little more time, but I think it's a learning experience for us teachers as well. Like we might not always know when they need that extra period or 2 or 3 maybe to get through and learn all the skills and as well as their reflection. So, but I think there's so many design cycles and design processes, and I was researching them all. But there is one, and I forget which one, because a lot of times like reflection comes at the very end. But there is one that like reflection was in every piece of it. And I really like that one because it's teaching the students and ourselves that it's not just about reflecting at the very end of the process. It's like each step of the way, how's it going? What can I improve? Am I meeting my target? And so I forget which one it is. I don't know if you guys know.
We put it in the middle of our inquiry cycle, the reflection and the action. We've moved to the middle because they're there all the time. It's,
yeah, exactly. I like that.
I've even tried it with the reading books with grade 1 this year. So, because they've got a box of quite a range of reading levels in, which they're choosing to take home. And I think so often we say, go choose your book. Is that right? Read me a page. That's fine. Take it home. And what I've done this time is choose the books, then go away on your own or sit with a friend and actually spend some time looking at them. And it's surprising how many have come back and said, actually, this isn't the right one for me. And they've changed it themselves. And it's, again, giving them time to find that out themselves rather than expecting instant decision.
Well, and going with what Thomas said is like scaffolding them. Because, I mean, in Reading and Writing Workshop, part of the first like lessons you teach are how to choose a book and ways that they can for them. And that actually was a really hard lesson for our parents there, because it was previous years, the teacher would bring them to the library. The teacher would like basically select the book for them and be like, you would like this book. And the parents were really upset that the teachers weren't doing that anymore. So we had to have meetings with the parents and explain why it's important to teach them this life skill of picking their own books. So it was really interesting. And I never thought of that as being like a way, because that's always just something I've done. I was trained in Reading and Writing Workshop. So, but it was such a mind shift for parents. Like, no, we want you taking our kids to the library and we want you to check out the books for them. But I'm like, they're not always going to have a teacher. So how are they always going to pick out a book? And
feel what they need most.
Yeah, that was interesting. Yeah, exactly. So, sorry. This whole time we're talking I'm focusing on parents because that's a lot of who I work with. I work with the teachers and the parents right now. And I really think like this last chapter, I think the whole book would be a lot to share with the parents, but I kind of want to go from here now and have a book club on the last chapter about how to support their children. And because I thought it was so powerful, like Thomas Friedman, and I don't know, he's some CEO, but he said in it, to him, curiosity plus passion is greater than IQ. And I thought that was and he's a parent saying this, but I think to kind of just educate and have these discussions with parents that allows them to see, because they all want their children to be these innovators and think creatively, but it's about laying the framework and the foundation of it at home as well as at school. So I think I'm going to talk to my principal about doing a group with chapter, because I think it would be really beneficial. So
they often succumb to the pressure of after school activities and clubs and playing football and swimming and music lessons, and there's no time left for the children just to learn to be imaginative.
Kids. Yeah. Well, and then I don't know, I had this question when one of the parents was talking about our kids are so programmed to succeed, they have no chance to explore. And like the balance of, and she was saying her daughter wasn't good at soccer every weekend. That was what it was. And the coach said, in order to be good, you have to come to all the games and da-da-da-da-da. And it was this balance. And then I'm reading also at the time this book on growth mindset. And I found the connection, because there is that balance of like, when your child makes a commitment and wants to improve at something, you don't just let them quit when they're not good at it, because they can continue working and grow. So I kind of disagreed with that mom. I know she's just one mom, but she said, oh, I didn't want her to feel pressured to do it every weekend. But at the same time, that's where the growth comes in, is when you make the commitment to keep trying and improving. And maybe after a season, if she doesn't like it, sure. But I don't know. I was kind of like trying to balance the two books I'm reading, like being innovative and creative, but then the growth mindset of showing up and continuing to improve. So
yeah, you need both. And I think giving them a range of opportunities first and letting them taste things and then decide is good. But how long do they go on before they decide they don't like it? The hard one.
For sure.
So yeah.
What did you said you had resources, right, on yours?
Well, it was just an interesting question. I think one of the I've forgotten where it was, but one of them said something about letting children choose what they bought. And it occurred to me, how many teachers actually ask their children, their students, what shall we buy with our class budget? What are you interested in? And I thought, well, maybe that's another direction. And then I moved on to thinking, well, we've got a lot of resources in school. How often do we just select them and give them to the children and expect them to do something? And how often do we say, give us a plan. If you can justify it, we'll let you use this equipment. And it's just an interesting idea of how do we select those resources, and can we involve more in it and get them to think and them to plan?
Yeah. No, I like
what
that.
You think?
Yeah, no, I think it's it seems so simple, but it is something that express or defend why they want to use that particular particular resource, or they want a different one than you offer. Think about it and their purpose, their long run purpose of, okay, I want to use pipe cleaners because it'll allow me to make a more realistic, model of whatever you're doing. So I like that example.
And they can have it. I had one interesting example with pre-K, and they were fighting over resources, and in the end we talked about how can we solve the problem. There came lots of ways, and in the end they said, well, we'll ask the assistant principal to buy some more. So the assistant principal said, well, maybe there's some in other classes. So they went round with an iPad saying, have you got any of these? They went back to the assistant and said, no, there are no more in the school. So then she purchased some. So
that's awesome. And then kind of helping them. Okay, we don't just have to buy them. We could look in the common resources we have. We're actually doing that now. We're redesigning our our library and making it learning commons. And so coordinator, and we have no space at our school. Like every class is taken all the time, and we can't expand because of zoning regulations and stuff. So my husband actually like benchmarked with other schools and graded a school in Sao Paulo. What they did is instead of building more, they went around to all their rooms, even if it was like a closet, and they looked around and they thought, how can we reconfigure this to make it a maker space? So that's kind of what you were talking about. Hey, Liz.
Hi.
So, hey, Thomas. So
Yeah,
we were just talking about resources, and Joy brought up a really good idea of giving students a choice of resources, like even in your class budget, and when you buy things, like maybe asking them what they want, and then they have to explain why they think it would benefit their project and stuff like that. So I like that idea. So, hey. One other thing I liked, because going back to, it was talking about like the parents and all these innovations, but then they all go back to the central core of they have these values that they want to make the world a better place, and they're driven by helping people. And it was talking about how values can be taught, but they have to be caught. And I was wondering how you guys do that at your schools. How do you teach values that kind of intrinsically motivate kids to help others more than just helping themselves?
it's an
That's a tough
interesting
one.
I think at every basic level, I think we can model as teachers and adults in the building how we treat each other. And I think the little things, if we treat each other with respect and we consider us, and they see us helping us, then I think that's the way it can be caught, by modeling.
Yeah, for sure. So, how do you guys do it at your school, Liz and Thomas?
You know, I haven't been at my current school long enough for me to be able to speak about. Let's see if I can figure this out. Okay. Can you see me? Yeah.
Good.
But first of all, hi. It's really good to join you. This is like the only one where I'm actually on call, so I'm excited. Hi.
Yay.
Anyway, I think so. I have two interesting ways of doing that, or the way that I'm seeing it at my school. I haven't been there long enough to be able to speak about it as well as I could about SIS where I was before here. But currently, because my school is a Christian school, so it has those Christian values. So there's a component to it that's kind of built in with it being an IB school about that idea of helping other people. So just this ethos of being, I don't know, good people, I guess, is just inherently kind of woven into everything that goes on at my current school. And right now I'm more of on the side of kind of observing how that plays out. Sometimes I feel like it's an interesting thing where I kind of see almost like an imbalance of the academic needs or what they're driven to do academically and everything else. Also, like so many activities that go along with it. That might be another tangent. But at my old school where I was for 7 years at SIS, we had passion projects and we instilled that in the kids. So Joy, like what you were talking about in terms of modeling, we really, in the advisory program, we were having the kids find passions, and the modeling happened by the advisors having those passions. So for instance, we had a teacher who was a knitter, and then she had the idea of wanting to do something for the displaced children of refugee children, and then she taught her group of sixth graders to knit hats. And then during passion hour, they were passionate about that, and then she really led the whole escapade to bringing that to life for them, and then that spread to sixth graders teaching 12th graders how to knit hats. And then so they were working with my advisory to do that with the kids. So I think that modeling is really key, but as an organization and as a school, it's not just modeling to say, hey, look, your teacher's doing that, but really, if we value that, it's systemized in a time where we actually allow that to be valued and they can see that. Because children, as well as adults, if we see that there's time given, we recognize that there is value placed in that time that is given. So it really, that idea of even caring, I think we have and especially children have it in them to want to care, but if we really want to grow it in them, we have to show them that what we do in actions match what we say in words.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
If that makes sense.
Did you say part of the IP curriculum is you've got attitude, you've got the attitudes, they've got to be we want them to be caring, they want them to be, and
Mm-hmm.
I think that comes in, if you see behaviour in those lines, you bring it in and say, oh, that's being principled, being caring. So noticing it when it's happening.
Mm-hmm.
And also,
I see it.
In books, if you're reading, quite often you'll highlight that sort of behaviour, reading stories.
In my school, so I'm elementary, and what we're doing, we're really having to explicitly teach those, I guess, qualities, like having cooperation and empathy and respect. And but just like you said, Joy, it's pointing out when they are. But one thing we realized once we started this, the CARES curriculum was the one I was talking about, when it's on Wednesday, they do multi-grade level groupings for an hour. The language, like the common language and understanding. So that was something we really had to form and say, like, when you're dealing with a problem, these are strategies you can use. We're not going to help you solve it, but here are some strategies, and giving them like the bank of vocabulary. And then it helped them to realize that this. And so I do a lot of supervision and duties. And so it's so powerful, because when I process with kids, they literally will be like, well, I feel very frustrated right now because you are not, and they're talking to another kid, and we call them I messages. So they have to start it with like, how I feel because why you need to stop, and da-da-da. And so they go through this whole thing. But for us, it was really just giving them the language and the vocabulary that was common across the whole school. So whether they were processing with another student, with a teacher, with an administrator, with their parents, like they go home and they tell their parents that their parents aren't having impulse control when they're getting extra dessert, like just little things like that. But so it goes with like the modeling, but for the younger students, I think it's really imperative to give them the vocabulary and the, not just the precise vocabulary they're using, but the why they're using those terms. And then it just kind of flows all over the school, and it's really powerful to see that. And then they understand, they're like, oh, she's sharing an iMessage, she must be feeling something. And then they listen more. So it gives them those qualities without being right there. And I can't be with every kid when they're processing with another. So it's empowering them to do it on their own. That was something that we learned, and we didn't have the forethought to think of that. We just figured, oh, they'll learn it as they go. So then we had to stop and kind of explicitly teach these steps and these strategies. So that's something our school did.
That sounds like how my last school did it. At my current school, it's more done through grade level assemblies. So, you know, the elementary assembly will focus on one concept, and then the middle school will do a different one, and high school is different, and then they meet monthly. But yeah, I think it works better if it's more integrated and not just a standalone assembly.
Mm-hmm. I think it goes back to what Liz was saying. Like, when students see that you're setting apart the time for it, they know that it's valued. Like, every Wednesday, we gave up an hour of instructional time to do this social emotional curriculum. And the kids, they realize that like very quickly, that, what do you mean we don't have reading and writing? We're doing this? Yeah. So I think, like, because we used to, prior to this, we did those assemblies, Thomas. We had like once a month, it was an assembly on respect, and it was kind of standalone, and there was no connection to the kids. But having that weekly hour that they really get to group and learn from each other, and then the whole school's doing it. So then when they go back to their classroom, everyone has that experience, and whether the connections within their classroom walls or with students from other classes, it's relevant to them, I guess.
It's always interesting if children had a disagreement in the playground and they come in. often it's best if you take time then to talk about it. But the curriculum perhaps won't allow the time because you've got to get the maths done or whatever. Do you then have a box where you can say, well, these are some of the things we can talk about in that time? Or is it very much curriculum-led, this is what we're going to do? Or do you listen to what the students are saying during the week and develop from there?
Right now, because it's the first time we're going through the 5 themes, it's kind of more teacher driven, the actual curriculum, but our psychologist is really good. Like I was saying, that tower building experience that they had, like and then we meet every Wednesday. So we do it Wednesday morning, and then our PD sessions we have every Wednesday afternoon, and we run them like we do responsive classroom. So it's like RC meeting. So we have a greeting, a morning message, and then teachers get to share. And the question is always something about how did it go in the morning? What do you need more of? How can we support you? And so in that, to kind of like slow down the pacing or to speed up, or so she adjusts it based on what teachers say from what their students say. Like we had a really difficult one about, because our theme right now is self-control and it was impulse control, and that it went over the kids' heads. So we went back and kind of retaught it and gave them, that's actually how the whole the popsicle design project came up, because we wanted a real way that kids could feel frustrated, feel angry, upset, feel failure, that we weren't just having them think of times, that they actually had that experience, that they all had a common one. So the teachers, we had a lesson and they said everything went over their head. So then and the principal and a teacher, we brainstormed how can we get them to actually feel these. Then we came up with that project. So we're actually, like, if you look at the scope and sequence, we're 3 lessons behind.
Okay.
I think the power that it had to give them that opportunity to really feel it was much more valuable than just going through what we had scheduled. So there is that flexibility, but initially it's kind of it's scheduled out for the semester, but there is the flexibility, which is nice. So, because we're creating it. I mean, we're creating it and the standards as we go. So that's what's nice about it. We do have the flexibility, which if it was something that we had to get through, we wouldn't probably have as much leeway. But,
I think it's really important though, right? To listen to, watch what's happening. And I think oftentimes in education, especially when it gets to the older ones, especially in a rigorous curriculum like IB, where people think that they have to cover all this material, sometimes we don't kind of pause and see what's happening with the kids. We just have an agenda and we say we have to get through this. So I think that way of developing that is just simply good pedagogy, right? You want to take a look at whether it's working or not, and if something needs more attention because that achieves the purpose of and the vision that you were going for in the first place. I think that's I think that's a good thing. I think sometimes we need to do that a little bit more.
Yeah, for sure. I think we're in the middle of social studies, kind of, we're re-looking at the curriculum, or not, it's kind of a pilot year. We created the standards last year. And this is I know Liz, you're new, but we've been talking, this is a unit we're trying to really make teachers think about it as inquiry-based. And the teachers initially freaked out because, I'm not going to get to all these standards, because there are tons of standards. And so it wasn't until grade level meetings when I met with the teachers and I said, do you know what, if you teach year, that's 2 more than they were taught last year, and that's okay. And then we'll adapt the curriculum to that, because we can't go about just like just bulldozing through this. Our students have never had social studies. They've never been taught social studies. So if we're just like hammering them with information, they're never going to want to learn it again. So we have, it's interesting because as admin, you think you're saying it over and over again. You have the flexibility, but they didn't hear it until like last week when I met with each grade individually. And I said, throw the standards out the window. I mean, don't throw them out, use them to guide your instruction. But if you don't get to them, that's okay. And as soon as they heard that, they were like, oh, and I think now they've come up with these plans to do an inquiry cycle that is more autonomous for the students, but also collaborative. So I think now that freed them up. It was just that to me to reflect back. I'm like, but we said it in an email. We said it when we introduced it. We said it all these times. But like, I think, and so maybe with our students, we need to do the same thing. Like we say it over and over again, but maybe we need to say it in a different way. Or maybe they just haven't, they have the autonomy.
We did an interesting game with looking at shapes and the definition of shape. And we drew a triangle and said, is it a triangle? And they had to move to one side of the room if it was yes, and the other side if it was no. And it's surprising how many times we had to do that for the ones who were absolutely adamant that wasn't a triangle because it wasn't an equilateral triangle. How many times did we have to do it before they changed that conception that a triangle could be twisted and changed around? Or and I think so often we move on without really understanding what the children understand.
Yeah.
So,
Joy, when they did that, did they have to, like, when they went to one side or the other, did they have to explain their thinking with each other or with the...
explain their thinking, and they could change sides if they wanted. And we then did a triangle which didn't quite join up, so it was 2 lines. And one of them said it wasn't a triangle because it only had 2 angles. So I was quite pleased with that one. But because the lines actually meet. So, but yeah, it can take a lot of time to change a concept in a child's mind. And just telling them that a triangle has 3 sides and 3 angles isn't enough for them to change their idea of what a triangle is.
Yeah. I know. And I think, like, the whole time I'm reading this, trying to read it through like different lenses as an educator, but then as an admin. And I just, I think it was the last chapter, they were saying, you know, I think it was one of the parents, we want to be our student to be in a school that cultures or creates a culture to foster ideas. And that just really hit me. Like, as an administrator, am I doing that for my teachers as well as the students? But as educators, are we doing that for our students? Like creating this culture where they can bring forth ideas and then they have the opportunity to manage the risk and how they deal with them. And right now, I don't think as the school, my school is, but that's something that I really want to work on for the next, you know, the amount of time I'm going to be here. Because I think that I'm like, I want him to be at a school where he can think of an idea and experiment with it and play with it and fail or, you know, do a prototype. So create those cultures at your school. Or do you have them? And if you do, then how did that process kind of unfold?
Partly it's the administration that set the idea that this is okay. If you've got an inquiry cycle and you're moving around it in your planning, it fosters that idea that yes, okay, we actually want you to let the children experiment. It's
support. Sorry. What about you, Thomas?
No, that's good. I think one of the interesting questions is, when do you say they're not really going anywhere and you need to move in and change it? So if for instance, we're looking at light and they're fascinated with shining a light in the dark and saying, well, this is great for telling stories, which is brilliant and it's creative. But if your curriculum says you're looking at science, experiments, and the properties of light, it's and they don't seem to have captured that. When do you move in and say, actually, this is what we're doing, and say what you're doing isn't really where we go, what we want to do, and how much do you give them space and time to go that way because what they're doing is actually very valuable? It's an interesting one.
Yeah, that's a challenge. I know I was working with 4th and 5th grade, and they had that same problem. They the kids went off, which they were super interested in everything they're doing. Like for 5th grade, they're doing this bananas unit, and they have to figure out why bananas grow places and and then we kind of came up with this idea to keep them focused, but not like tie them down to anything. Is the kids have come up with these questions to guide them along the unit. And so the teacher puts that up at the beginning, and then the kids can work on whatever. They have one must do, which is like contribute to your map or your group map or whatever. And then the others are can do's. And the only requirement is that they can tie back to this question.
Yeah. Okay.
That's something that the teachers kind of came up with that keeps them, because as a grade level, they want to be unified and make sure their kids are learning and getting the same standards, but at the same time gives the students the flexibility and the freedom, but also the accountability not to just, in their fifth grade, I know you teach first grade, so it's a little different, but the accountability to, I'm exploring, but within this kind of, I don't know, I have these constraints, so I don't know.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, you could also bring in the research skills and what they are interested in. So, okay, what are the questions you could ask about this, and how could you find out the answers? So, how does it feel if you're telling a story in the dark with the light, and if you're telling a story out in the light? And does it change the story? Does it change the story you tell? There's a lot you can develop in terms of the research skills in what they're interested in, but for the properties of light.
Yeah, there's a fine line. What do Thomas and Liz, what do your schools do to kind of create that and foster that environment of ideating? Or maybe previous schools, because I know you guys are both new to your schools. So,
Thomas, why don't you go ahead?
Okay, I would I would say that my current school is in the beginning stages, possibly, of ideation. My school is just getting into inquiry-based teaching for MYP. It's previously, or even now, it's very American style. You know, the teacher is giving the information and the students are regurgitating, basically. But I think starting in elementary, I think that they're doing a little bit more in allowing students to come up with their own questions and find their own paths.
Yeah. It's interesting to look at it. So my current school is a completely and fully IB school, so with PYP, MIP, and GP. And so inquiry-based learning is huge. But for me, the difficulty, and as an administrator, what I see is that it's difficult to get the teachers to ideate, and therefore they struggle with that ideation process as they pass it down to the kids. So there are teachers who certainly do it well, and I'm not saying overall, but when I, as a new person, and also as I see some of the new teachers that the school has hired that came in with me, I look at them and they're struggling all the time because they don't have necessarily a guide that says you have to do it this way. So when it comes to inquiry-based learning, it's a huge struggle because they're like, a textbook. Why can't I follow this textbook? Or how do I do this? How do I do that? And then it's just a struggle trying to figure that process out. So the more that I see is that I think somehow we need something in place to get teachers to unlearn as well. Just earlier it was mentioned that it's hard to get a concept to mind once they've set their mind to it. I forgot how it was exactly worded, but that whole time I was thinking it's so difficult to get the adults to do that. Like it's very difficult to get someone to unlearn something. And I just
especially teachers.
Yeah, absolutely. And it, it's one of those things that as much as I would like to think that I'm better at that, it was really funny because just this past week, I had a meeting with my elementary math team and the middle school math team. So as we're looking at grade 5 and 6 movement up the ladder with the math program, the grade 6 teachers were frustrated because the kids didn't know basic numeracy. And then for me, when I go into classes and I see how it works in the PYP and they're going into MYP, PYP's inquiry-based ideas that meet the child where they are, so you don't get them to memorize algorithms, but you give them all of these different ways that they can figure out how they understand the number system, which is awesome. But at the same time, for me, I was asking a genuine question going, so is algorithm one of the ways? By the time they get to 6th grade, how do they get to choose in grade 6 too, or once they get into pre-algebra, they're kind of stuck? And it was very interesting because one of the elementary teachers, the math department head for elementary, who's a grade 2 teacher, she gave me a number and she was like, how would you do 98 plus 28 or something like that? And I was like, wait, what? You want me to add that right now? And she was like, yeah. And then I did it, the way that I know, right? Like I have a very, it's just the way, just this algorithm, right? Just add. And then she was like, great. I have kids who will do it in the tens, right? So they'll round up to the 100 and something, right? Anyway, whatever those rounding techniques are, there are so many of them. And I was like, that's fascinating because I'm still going, what?
Yeah.
Why? I just memorized that,
Yeah.
I have 2 languages when I do math in my head, right? So I memorized it in Korean. Like I did the 8 times 2 first, you know what I mean? Like looking at the last 8 last digits. So it was just very interesting that it was just another reminder that it's hard to unlearn something. And when it comes to ideating anything, the most important thing that I've learned is that the teachers have to recognize that they're learning alongside students and that they let the students know that. We did a PL session and I had teachers in my session making stuff and they were so frustrated. It was so interesting to see the different types of learners, because there were the learners who were like, this is where I need direct instruction. Like I had to teach her turn and go, that's what I'm waiting. They have the language, right? So they're like, direct instruction. I can't make this work and I don't know how. Whereas on the flip side, you're like, yes, but this is where you use your partner and the peers. But those two people in particular were like almost angry, right? If not angry, that I wasn't giving them the answer. And so I think when you look at teachers like that, they're probably the ones that when they see a child struggle, they think the right thing to do is give him or her the answer. But the point is not even, it wasn't even to get the motor, that wasn't even the point, right?
Yeah.
So the important thing is for adults to be learners alongside the students and let the students see that. And that's the point of vulnerability for teachers, I think. And I think it's really important that we do if we want our kids to be ideating. And our teachers, we want them to be innovators as well, for sure.
Yeah. Our teachers are really struggling with this inquiry unit in social studies. To the point where it's like, as a teacher looking at them, you see it's their max level of frustration. And so that's why I was meeting with the different groups. In January, we have a week where they come back and the students aren't there, and we do a lot of PD. And we were brainstorming as a leadership team how teachers to understand the inquiry process. Because previously, the past 3 years has been a whirlwind of change at our school. Prior to that, it was a basal reading book. It was like every kid on the same page, every kid doing the same problem the same way, And so teachers have been amazing in accepting all this change. Now we're throwing one more thing at them, kind of, because they've gotten their, equilibrium back after all this change. But so the idea we came up with is teachers are going to do their own inquiry on inquiry. And we're going to start together and we were just going to give one article for them to read as so everyone has the same understanding of what we're going toward. But one of the teachers that's in the leadership team, she said, well, what if we gave 3 or 4 articles and they could choose? And so I was like, yeah, that's perfect, because that's what it's all about. So they're going to read that. And then from there, one day because we have a million things to do in this 1 week. But and then the next morning we're going to come back together, and then they have 2.5 hours to totally go through the inquiry cycle. It'll be kind of a warp speed one, but and then the last half hour we're going to do like kind of speed geek dating, like where they share what they learned about the inquiry cycle from their own inquiry. Do you know, because we do have some teachers, like you were saying, Liz, that they're very knowledgeable about it and they know it and they're comfortable with that, letting the students kind of guide the instruction or the pace. But then we have other teachers that aren't comfortable. So we realize we can't do like a one-size-fits-all PD. That it would never work. And so that's what we came out with. I'll let you guys know how it goes. We'll see. I hope it goes well. But I just think it's like for them to go through the process of being frustrated, like you said, and I need instruction now, but us kind of stepping back and not saying, okay, here's what it is. Because we've tried that method, honestly. When we introduced this, we did like, this is the inquiry cycle. This is da-da-da-da-da-da-da. And it still didn't work. So we're kind of on to like phase or try 3 or 4 of like a different approach. And I hope it will work.
I mean,
So.
I think another thing that some teachers found helpful is watching little video clips of teachers in action, so they can actually see an inquiry teacher and see what sort of questions they're asking. And I think by watching it, they often understand better. If you can.
Yeah.
But
yeah. Well, we even got into the not argument, but the conversation of like, do we give them a database of resources, right? Like, here's where you could look, da 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 da. Keep in mind, like, I give my kids a lot of autonomy. So I'm like, no, they don't need it. They can find it. If it doesn't match, then they'll figure that out. And we'll be there to kind of guide them along. And then one of the teachers on our leadership team, who this is a new thing for, she's like, well, I would prefer a reference chart if I, you know, so even with us in the leadership team, we had totally different approaches because of who we are as learners.
Yeah, ask her to make up the reference chart for everybody else.
Yeah, so I'll let you guys know how it goes.
Interesting. Very interesting.
Yeah. But do you have anything else we didn't touch on? Because I know, I don't know, there's...
The other thing I thought about was the digital portfolios, because one of them suggested they should be used as a merit badge, and it made me think: can you assess innovative teaching digitally, and how do you do that? And if you start using portfolios, do you then wait for does the teacher then start taking control, because I know it's an assessment of the teacher as well, rather than letting the students take control? I thought that it's an fascinating area.
Yeah, it's a touchy area. I like the portfolios, like the digital. Earlier, I think it was in chapter 5, they said, you know, every student from K through 12 should have an ongoing portfolio that they add to that's their choice. It's not put this in your portfolio, put this in. It's kind of their own choice to show how they're learning. I don't know with teachers. I think that'd be tricky.
It's tempting, I think, for teachers to start and say, put this in, because that's a great piece of work, and then changes it to the
yeah. Yeah, I think it goes back to the purpose. Like, if we're like, what's the purpose of having the teacher have it? Is it so we can assess the teacher, or is it for them to reflect back on their, like, oh, I put this in last year, but I thought of such a better way to instruct or empower my students, you know? So I think you'd have to be careful how you frame that for teachers, because as soon as teachers hear it's an evaluation, then it changes the purpose, whether you want it to be or not.
It's the student portfolio. It's the student, and,
oh, okay.
But the teachers tend to take control of what goes in that student portfolio.
Yeah. We don't have portfolios at our school. That's something I want to try, but we're still trying to, we're figuring out technology. We're introducing it. Yeah, I don't want teachers to jump ship. So, do you visit your school?
At my old school, we did. Here, in MIP, they kind of have the e-assessments that makes them feel like somewhat of an archival process and a big presentation that they do at the end of the year. So there's a curriculum that is designed to kind of drive a level of it to exist. But for the DP students, which is a shame, because it's basically currently the culture that we do what we have to do for a program. And so that's a little bit frustrating. Again, it was just going, and I'm in the process of meeting with every PLC, every curriculum team, and in even the MIP or PIP planner where it says reflection and teacher reflection, there's definitely the varying degrees of what that looks like for certain teachers and what it doesn't look like for certain teachers. And yet it's interesting because when I converse with them, they have all of their kids reflect.
Mm-hmm.
And I've seen some reflection models that they put into Rubicon or that they have in a Google Doc or Google folder. And it kind of kills me because I'm like, they're terrible. It's like, we've done this and I will now do this better. And I'm like, so when I was meeting with the teachers, I said, I will never touch your reflections, even though I might help you with your essential questions and inquiry, all of that, because that's what I'm here for. But I think reflections are personal, and I think you choose the degree to which that you reflect. But at the same time, it's something to think about. I see that in your curriculum, you're always asking the kids to reflect. So this is probably a great area that if it's a hoop that you have to jump through anyway, because you have to have the reflections, why not do it in a way that you would like to see it in your kids? Because then you can take this, you can just download it, copy it, screenshot it, however you want to do it, and give it to the kids as a mentor text.
Mm-hmm.
Use that as a model. So I see that it's in your curriculum and you do it at the end of every unit, and you do it, because I'm showing them once again that I'm looking through their curriculum and their unit plans, and I've read them, and then I'm giving them the autonomy to say, I wouldn't dare touch the reflections, and I'm not going to be the judge of it. I want you to be the judge of it. But let's get practical. If you have to do it anyway, is there a way that you would take this? Like, is it okay if I were to take one of these and say, look, this is a model for what I want you to do? And it was a very interesting process, because some of the teachers would chuckle and they're like, right? Because they're just jumping through those. And so I'm like, well, then let's do something that we hate, right? So as someone who believes and values reflection, and in my last, especially 5 years of teaching, I've worked so hard at the high school level, also the task coordinator, to break that cycle that reflection is something boring and it's something that has to be done in a certain way.
Yeah.
And I am certain that the kids that have loved the different forms of reflections. They didn't even know they were reflecting it, they were doing it.
Mm-hmm.
So as definitely just a fighter for that,
Mm-hmm.
I think it is valuable to have that conversation. And teachers who don't see a value in it, or I think it's the same thing as kids. Teachers just haven't seen it done, or haven't even realized that what they do in different ways is even reflection.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What's the metacognition of like being aware? Yeah.
Absolutely.
I also
It's
know students.
metacognitive for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. Now I know students who they're excited by the work, but the question is that, but will we have to reflect on that? Because if we have to reflect on it, we don't want to know about the work, because it's been introduced in such a way that, okay, reflect now, and it loses all authenticity. So as you say, it's how it's done.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think
Do them a disservice if we don't recognize that. So even if it were that, yeah, just having even my phone and asking a kid, did you like it? And they have a reaction. And then when they are breaking that process is when they're like, oh, we have to do that. send them the videos of just snippets, and they're like, "Oh my gosh, this is amazing!" Or I would collect those snippets from the kids and then create a iMovie myself, and then say, "Look at what you guys are able to reflect on," and they get excited about that possibility.
Yeah.
Oh, we can do it that way. Absolutely. I can capture my conversation with so and so to do it. Yeah, absolutely. You know, so just giving them creative ways and modeling it, I think, makes it a big difference in how they understand that process.
Yeah, I agree.
I like the idea of like taking having the different ways, like with this book, I tried to do visual note taking and stuff, and using those as mental
Modeling what you
texts and like showing the kid, because I do that in
Yeah.
like when I taught with the writing workshop, like I had my own writer's notebook and I wrote, like, not with the class sometimes if there's time, but like I would just write, and then when it came to like a conference or something, it wasn't just this made up reflection or this made up story. It was something that they could see. It goes back to what you were saying earlier with the time. Like if they see you're putting the time into it, they see the value. If they see the purpose of the reflection or the creativity that could be allowed within it, then they'll be, I think, more likely to buy in.
Right.
So,
yeah, or even
like
to hear a
that
teacher
idea.
say when it was a hard process, or to hear a teacher say that that was a hard process, or that was a terrible process, or I hated it. Like, that's okay. It doesn't have to be such that, and I learned, you know, like,
Yeah.
but,
Well, it's like all the teachers that were, these teachers of these amazing innovators in this book, they all had that relationship with their kids. They looked at them as equals. So I'm sure that they were, he didn't say it in the book, but I'm sure they shared the failures. Like, oh, I just taught that lesson yesterday and it was horrible. Sorry, guys. Like having that, the humility to say that. I'm sure that every single professor or teacher would do that. That was in this book. So kind of modeling after them. So, well, I want to respect your guys' time because I know it's like an hour, and then also my son's going to be crying in a second. So, thank you so much for participating. I'll put this up on Twitter and everything. But if you guys continue throughout the year and have any ideas about innovation, like keep using that hashtag or sharing, and we have each other's emails because I think like I've learned so much from all of you and your places at school, and even though we all don't teach the same subjects and stuff, so I think it's just it's been a great learning opportunity for me to learn alongside other wonderful educators. So thank you.
Thank you for organizing.
Yeah, you're welcome. So now I have to put the video together. So yeah, that's going to take a long time. Yeah. All right. Have a good Sunday, guys.
Bye.
Bye.
Oh, yeah.